Phase 3. So Phase 3 or Day 7 of Air Assault begins your repelling phase. You go to the Rappel Tower, but before you actually begin any repels, they show you how to do everything. So there's 3 stations you go through. You go through a station showing you how to belay. You go through a station showing you how to hook up. So they already taught you how to tie your Swiss seat on the last day. So Day 6, they show you how to tie it and how to hook up your carabiner. Now they're going to show you how to hook up. So they're going to give you your ropes that you'd see on the Rappel Tower or on the Black Hawk, and they'll show you how to hook up. It's pretty much just pushing down into your carabiner, wrapping around the carabiner, putting it through again, and then locking it. It's not much, but they have to show you how to do it because you do take a test on it later. Once you get through that station, you go to another station showing you pretty much the process of how you're going to do everything. So they have little, what they call fake helicopters. It's literally just a box with a hookup rope in it, but there's 4 hookup ropes. And you get in, they're going to go through all the hand signals and what you need to do, and then they're going to expect you to do it, and they'll just have you practice it. Once you get through all those stations, you get your hip rappel seat or your Swiss seat checked. So they just make sure everything's good on it, and you go over to the slanted wall. The slanted wall was like 10 feet tall probably. It wasn't very tall, but rather than being a straight up and down wall, it's at a 45-degree angle, just so you practice the rappel without having the full effect of actually going down a tower or a wall. And so once you practice on that and you get through it, and that took a lot of time because there's not many instructors, and this is their first time doing it, so a lot of people are getting yelled at and they're doing it wrong, so they get told to go back to the end of the line and try it again. But we only did them once. We did the slanted wall practice run 1 time each, and once we got done with that, we moved to the actual Rappel Tower. The first one we did was on the wall side, so we all went down, we rappelled, and they had us just kind of walking down the wall. They want us to walk fast, but we were just walking down the rappel wall. And then once we got done with that, we did 2 just free fall rappels. So they had on the other sides of the towers, there was no wall on the side. You were just kind of leaning back, and then you would just go. You would just jump out and free fall. It goes a lot slower because you're doing a lot of waiting. Again, theme of the course, you're just going to wait a lot. When you do the physical rappel, it's going to be super fun. But that's like 15 seconds of your life as compared to the 45 minutes you spent waiting to actually do it. You also learn how to lock in. So if your right hand's your dominant hand, which it is for me, your left hand is what they call the guide hand, and it's just holding the rope above you. Your right hand is your brake hand, and it's holding the rope behind you. For locking in, you take your guide hand, reach it around, grab the rope, and pull it up. So that way, your brake hand is now free, and it can also hold the rope. And it's just an easy way to just hang there, and you don't have to really do any work. That would be used in the case of if you had an issue with your carabiner or with the rope, or you just can't go down any further. It's just a lot more comfortable to sit there, and it's a lot less work for you, and so you can wait there a lot longer than having to just hold your brake hand in your back for that long. So when you go to the Rappel Tower, they'll actually have you practice falling on the wall side. They'll make sure you're ready and your belay's ready, and then they'll say, let go. And you just let go with both your hands, and it's up to the belay man to pull the rope, and that stops you from falling. For the most part, it's fine. It doesn't have any issues. No one got hurt. But every once in a while, you'll get a belayer that is not paying attention, or they think they're ready, and they don't understand what they're supposed to be doing. We had a few people fall a couple feet. We had, I think, 2 people fall like 20 feet before the belayer caught them. Again, no one got hurt. You're not going to die. They had air assault sergeants standing by, and in the case that a belayer wasn't paying attention, they would go over and do it for him. But there's always some risk of just getting scared because you're suddenly falling and you're not supposed to be. Once you do that, you practice locking in, and then they have you go down, and that's the entire day. Day 2 of Phase 3 is similar except for without the stations at the beginning teaching you how to do it. So you just go straight to the Rappel Tower, and you're doing free fall rappels the entire day. We only ever did the wall side of the Rappel Tower one time, and that was the day prior. So once you get done with that, we never did it again. We only did the free fall side. We did go on this day, we did go with some of our gear. So we had our rubber ducks, and they gave us some type 3 nylon, and they told us to make a sling out of it, and then you put on your flick, you zipped it up, you clipped it, and you put your rifle on your back, and then you rappel with that. We actually were supposed to go with our full ruck, but we didn't get to. We brought our rucks there, and they told us to get them ready, and then they told us to get them on. We went over to the Rappel Tower, and we just ran out of time. So I'm pretty sure that most air assault schools you will get to rappel with your ruck, but because we had so many people, it took a lot longer to get through everyone than it would at a normal school. So we didn't get to. It's a little disappointing, but you do a lot of rappelling that day. That day it rained a lot for us. That was the first day of thunderstorms, and so when we ate lunch, we were just surrounded by pouring rain. So lunchtime got to be a little longer than usual, which, again, nothing to complain about, but it was very wet. While we were eating, a salesman came by, and he's the guy who helped us take the class picture that day, and he pretty much shows all of his merchandise and says, hey, graduation day, you can come by and look at all these t-shirts, sweatshirts, class photos, plaques and stuff with all the air assault memories. It's all super overpriced, but if you have money and it looks good, definitely to check it out, because it was some pretty cool stuff. But they did that, they showed us all that while we were eating. Once we were done eating, it actually stopped raining, or at least stopped pouring, and we did more rappels. The rappels themselves get easier as you go, but they just add in various number of stops. It's the main thing they're practicing with these is just making sure you're doing a controlled descent. You can go as fast as you want. I mean, I went really fast every time just because I thought it was fun, but they don't care how fast you go as long as you show that you're controlled. What they don't want to see is you scared out of your mind and not going when you're supposed to. So the people they yelled at the most during this phase were people that they said, okay, you're going to do 3 stops, 3 breaks on your way down, and then I'm going to say go to the ground and you're fine. And what they would do is they would break so many times, they're like, just go, like, it's not that hard. Release your brake hand and just go. But people were scared. A lot of people there were scared of heights, and a bunch of people ended up slamming into the tower. When they were supposed to jump off, they tried to jump and brake because they didn't want to go fast. And what they ended up doing is they jumped off like 2 feet and they braked, and then when they came swinging back towards the tower, because they weren't still going down, they just slammed into the tower. And it was, I mean, there's nothing after the first little ledge, there's nothing to run into. So if you just get past that, you're fine. But they would brake so quickly because they're afraid of heights that many people, it wasn't even just like 1 or 2 people did it. This was a fairly regular thing that somebody would be scared and they wouldn't want to go. And so when they went and jumped off, they would hit their head or hit their chest or hit something, usually in the upper part of their body, on the Rappel Tower because they didn't go far enough down. You also did your lock-in test, so that same station that they were showing you how to lock in, just putting the rope through your carabiner, wrapping it around, and locking the carabiner. That's all it is. It took most people about 6 to 9 seconds to do it. I think the test used to have a requirement of doing it in 9 seconds, but now, or at least when we went, it was a 15-second time limit. So you had plenty of time to do it. But that was the test they did, just to make sure you can practice it. It's much harder in the tower because it's no longer a rope this long. It's a rope that's 100+ feet long, and it's all dangling off the side, so you have to like pull it up and then try to hook up. But they don't time you when you're in the tower, so you don't have to worry about it as much. But you take your test that day, and they say from then on, once you pass that test, you are not allowed to make any errors with that hookup. So it's not a very hard thing to do, but there's a couple things you can get wrong, like if you miss one of the ropes, if you forget to lock it, or when you reach behind to grab the rope, if you don't grab all the ropes. It's not hard to do, but we did have a few people get kicked out of the phase because they did what we call a fatal hookup. So they did one of the errors, whether they forgot to lock their carabiner, they didn't grab all the ropes, or they didn't put all the ropes in their carabiner. Any of those issues after your lockup test will get you kicked out of air assault. We had one guy who was a recycle, so he had gone to air assault previously and he got kicked out for doing a fatal hookup. He came back to our air assault and he did another fatal hookup after our lock-in test and he got kicked out. The air assault sergeant said they kind of felt bad, but the rule's the rule. The rule is that once you pass your test, you're not allowed to mess up on that. So it stinks. It only happened to a couple people, but it does happen. At the end of the day, we got our helicopter rappel briefing. So at the end of the day, when we went to the classroom, got the standard briefing for the next day, as we always do. They just kind of told us a very tentative schedule. They didn't know all the details. They were expecting a lot of thunderstorms, so they didn't know if it was going to work out, but they told us about what to expect, and they told us everything we needed for the next day. The last day, so day 9, which is the third day of phase 3, we went out, and the only thing we did the entire day was wait and do one rappel from a Black Hawk. It was a huge day of waiting. Like, if I thought you did a lot of waiting for the testing for sling loading, this was that times like 3 or 4, depending on where in the sequence you were. So you tie your rappel seat real quick, you do your rappel seat test, they make sure there's no issues, and just like the hookup test, once you finish your Swiss seat test, they expect you to be able to tie it perfect from then on. And the whole reason they wait till the third day to do this test is because they don't want to have to kick a lot of people out earlier in the phase. So once you get your Swiss seat tied, they do your test. Anyone who failed that, they get their retake as usual, and they train them and inspect them right there. So it took maybe an extra 15 minutes to retrain the people that failed, but once you got that done, we ended up taking our seats off, and then we did a massive run. So we had everybody in a group again, and we all ran over to the fields where the Blackhawks were coming. It was a clear indication that the Army and the Air Force do things completely different, especially in ROTC, in terms of marching, because in Air Force ROTC, marching is one of the only things we do. I mean, we do other stuff, but if we had to focus on one thing, it would probably be marching. And so, I mean, from the very beginning of ROTC, you are told and taught how to march. Apparently, they must not do much of that in the Army ROTC program because it was absolutely terrible. I mean, there was someone always calling some type of cadence, whether it was a fun cadence or just a boring left, right, whatever cadence. You'd be surprised how many people couldn't get the left and the right correct. You'd think it's pretty self-explanatory. But when he says left, you're supposed to step with your left foot. When he says right, step with your right foot. Every time I would step with my left foot, the guy in front of me would step with the right foot. There were several times I would step on his heel, and I felt bad. I mean, it was kind of annoying to me, but I mean, if I was him, I'd be upset because like someone's stepping on my heel. So after like the third time of it happening, I was like, hey, can you get on step? Like, sorry, I didn't want to step on your heel, but you're not even on step. And his response was just kind of baffling because I was expecting him to either be mad at me for stepping on his heel, or maybe to be apologetic because he's getting in my way or something, but it was neither of those. It was, his response was, "This is the army. We don't know how to march." And I was just like, I was flabbergasted because, like, it wasn't, it was just a proof that no one cares. It was just, the point is we're going there, he's calling cadence, no one's listening to him, and so if you're on step, great. If you're not, no one cares. And so it was just, it was an eye-opener for me, because every time I tried to stay on step, I would just end up stepping on people's feet. And so on the way back, I decided, you know what, I'm going to do it the army way. I'm just not going to care, and at least I won't step on anyone's feet. And it was odd because I actually didn't step on anyone's feet, and no one stepped on my feet. So I guess I was doing it right. From there, they told us to tie our Swiss seats again. We got them inspected again. Make sure you don't mess up. This is the only other time other than your test that you will be inspected on your Swiss seat and expected to do it perfectly. Once the helicopters came in, we got a little briefing how things are going to work, and we got a demo by the instructors. Once they did that, they sent us over to each of the Blackhawks. There were 2 Blackhawks in total, and we just lined up waiting to go. I lucked out because I was one of the last people to get my Swiss seat inspected, and I thought I was going to be the last one to go, but they ended up reversing the lines. So because I was one of the last ones to get inspected, I was one of the first people to get to rappel. And I was very thankful for this because the Swiss seat is incredibly uncomfortable. It gave me rub burns, and like it just took off the skin on my hips. I still have like almost scarring there. Once it's your turn, they get you ready. They send you to the Blackhawk. You hook up. It's not a very tall Blackhawk. Like in the Rappel Tower, you're actually standing up. In the Blackhawk, you're on your knees right next to the door. And if you're afraid of heights, or you've never been in a helicopter, or you're just a little nervous to begin with, it's a little like, not overwhelming, but it's definitely a surprise. It was a surprise to me. I'm not afraid of heights, and I wasn't worried about this, but when I saw the helicopter rise above the super tall tree, that it's not like a stable platform like a Rappel Tower and we're like swaying back and forth, it gets your blood pumping. So you get set up. You're not used to being on your knees for it, so getting set up is a little more difficult. We had a few people actually fall. So because you're on your knees and we're not used to it, when they try to get into their L, so they're sticking their legs out and just hanging out of the helicopter, a few people slipped and just fell. They didn't get kicked out for it, honestly. There was a lot of things people could have been kicked out for that they were just very lenient in this phase. The only thing they weren't lenient on was fatal hookups. If you did a fatal hookup, they would sometimes try to help you in the sense of like, are you sure you're ready to go? And ask you that. And people would be like, yeah, I'm ready. But the reason they're asking is they're pretty much implying you should check that again. Because there were a few people that did get kicked out for that. So the only other thing that gets you kicked out is just doing what you want. Pretty much if you do something before you're told to do it, depending on the level of safety issue, you can get kicked out for it. Very few people did, because even the people that slipped and fell out, that was determined to be an accident. You don't get kicked out for an accident, you only get kicked out for something you should have done correctly. But once you get done with your rappel, you go down, you assist the belayer, so you're just holding the rope behind him, and then after you do that, then you're the actual belayer. Once you get done belaying, you go back, you get out of your Swiss seat, which feels amazing, and you just spend the rest of the day waiting. We waited for hours to get everyone through, and they give you MREs to eat, and you're just waiting there. It's the entire day. We got done fairly early. I think we got done around, I think it was like 3 o'clock. And I mean, it's early compared to other days. So once everyone was done with their rappel from the Blackhawks, we got in a line and just kind of went over the field just to make sure there wasn't any trash on it, and then we all marched back. But once we got back, we had a quick ruck brief for the 12-miler. It wasn't a very in-depth brief. It was pretty much them telling us that it's going to be the exact same as the 6-mile ruck. They were just going to change out some of the colors of the chem lights because they ran out of red chem lights apparently. They told us that instead of having one turnaround point and having to grab one item when you turn around, because it's a 3-mile course and you have to do it twice for 6 miles, so there were 3 turnaround points and you would have 3 items when you finish. And we also had a little graduation practice of just kind of going through the whole ceremony process just to make sure we had everything down, so there weren't any surprises or any mistakes. We did have, I think, a brigadier general coming, so they wanted to make sure everything was set for it. So we practiced the graduation a little bit, and then we went to bed. So graduation day, we were so thankful it was here. You are spending plenty of time prior to this day making sure your ruck is completely packed, and you will be nervous that you forgot something. Even if you've gone through it 3 times and you know everything's in there, there's always going to be something in the back of your head thinking, did I forget this? Did I forget this? Just because you're freaking out thinking you're going to do this whole thing and get kicked out for something dumb like forgetting your earplugs or something. We all woke up around 1 a.m. Not entirely our choice, but there's always that guy who wakes everyone up every single day. He sets his alarm way earlier than he really should. And then when he got up, he decided everyone else should be up and he would just turn on the lights. We never found out who this guy was, but it's a good thing because there were several of us that were planning to not be very nice if we found him. I won't say I was one of them, but there was definitely thoughts about it. And several other people were like determined to find this guy. But yeah, so we woke up at 1 a.m. We got our stuff ready. They give you an MRE again for breakfast, as if you want to eat breakfast at 1 in the morning. At 2:15 we got formed up and we stretched and just waited until they were ready for us to start the ruck. We started the ruck at 3 a.m. and there's not much to really say about the ruck. There was thunderstorms in the area when we did it, so we actually got to watch lightning like in the clouds. We didn't see anything like go down and actually strike the ground, but you could see lightning in the sky and light up the clouds, which was kind of cool. We were kind of surprised they never stopped us. They told us in the briefing prior that if there's lightning within a 5-mile distance, 5-mile radius, that they're gonna pretty much sound some horns and tell us to stop until the lightning's gone. But I guess because it wasn't actually striking the ground, it didn't apply. So instead we just got a light show. Thankfully it also didn't rain until after we were done, because once we got done it was pouring. So the first time you got to the turnaround point, they gave you a pipe cleaner. When you went back, they gave you a popsicle stick like during the 6-miler. And then when you got to the 9-mile turnaround point, they gave you your wings. And it was like a very melodramatic experience, because you're expecting it to be like you have your wings finally, like this is what you've worked for, and you expect it to be this like glorious, triumphant like music sounding in the background, but it's not. You're tired and you're like, just give me my wings and let me get this over with. They pulled a little stunt on us. I don't think it was on purpose, but it happened and it was cruel. So there was a guy who's doing exactly 15-minute mile pace, and he had chem lights on, and then the medics were behind him in their trucks, and so they told you, hey, if you look behind you and you can see the headlights, then you know the pacer's getting close and you need to speed up. And so they didn't tell us though that at the 9-miler the medic trucks left. I don't know if they were maybe treating someone or if they decided to take a different route back or something, but all we knew is that every time we looked behind us there was never truck headlights, and so we thought we were fine. We slowed down thinking we have a whole bunch of time to spare, and it ended up being like a tortoise and the hare moment, because we continued to slow down thinking we have plenty of time, and all of a sudden we hear this guy yelling, "Run!" And we thought, oh, it's one of the air assault sergeants. Why is he's just yelling run? Because we're almost done. He wants to get it over with. But after people started running past us, we turned to one of the people running and going, why is everybody running? And then we looked behind us and we saw the guy, and we're like, is that who I think it is? And they're like, yes, that's the pacer, run. So we started running, but my leg was cramping up at that point, and trying to go from a slow walk to a like run as fast as you can, my leg just started cramping up, and I was like, this isn't gonna work. So I did a weird little like hobble for the last half mile, just trying to go fast enough to stay ahead of the pacer, and it worked. I finished with 30 seconds to spare. I will not say that's a good time, but I did finish. Once you finish, they gather everyone, and you start your last layout inspection. They moved us to covered areas because it was starting to rain, but if it's not raining, they'll just send you back to the same place you always go. They tell you to dump out all your stuff. They want you to make it look somewhat presentable, but they don't require it. For us, what they did is they had you stand there at the position of attention, and they said, in your left hand, grab your goggles, in your right hand, grab your earplugs. And then they would say, go. You had to go, grab it with each hand, hold it up to the side, and then when they went by and saw that you had it, they'd say, stuff it. And you just shove it in your ruck, and you go back, and then you take a knee to let them know you've already been inspected. You do that with every single item on your checklist. It's very nerve-wracking because you're like, I hope I didn't forget anything, or I hope I didn't lose anything on the ruck. There was one guy who couldn't find his earplugs when they called for him, and so they actually started sending him away, and sometime in the process of him leaving, he actually found his earplugs. So they let him back in, and I'm sure he was very grateful for that, but that just kind of shows the nerves that everyone has, like that thought of, that could be me. Once everyone was done, most stuff was already packed up. There was just a few things laying out, and so they were like, you have 10 seconds to shove everything else in your bag and close it and put it on your back. And 10 seconds is not nearly enough time, and I think they figured that out. I don't know if they knew that beforehand, but they said go. Everybody was scrambling to do it, and half the people were putting their bags on their back without anything like actually strapped down and closed, which resulted in many items being flung out of their rucks, and their response was just humorous to watch because stuff was just going everywhere. And so they gave us a little extra time to help each other put stuff back in the ruck and clamp it down, but they were definitely trying to just go as fast as they could, and it's definitely a hurry up and wait, because they said you have till 8:30 to go to our barracks, get a shower, get changed, and get all our stuff packed. Then we had to take our stuff out of the barracks and put it all together just so that we could clean the barracks and they could inspect it. They gave us a little while to do that, but they made us hurry so much for it, and they didn't even end up coming by to inspect until after graduation. So it was the whole hurry up and wait because they made us hurry as fast as we could. And once we got our stuff out of the barracks, we ended up just waiting around for another hour or two before graduation was about to start. That did mean we get a little extra time for breakfast because the food was there, and because we had hurried to get out there, we had plenty of time to eat. But it was a lot of hurry up and wait for that. We waited around a little bit. It was still raining, so we were trying to avoid the rain, and then they moved us over to a different area, and we kind of practiced how we got into the graduation, or into the ceremony, into the classroom. It was literally practicing walking 20 feet, stopping and turning. That was all we had to do. We had to walk in the door, stop when the first person got to the end of the room, and then once everybody was there, they would call left face, and you would turn to the left. That's all you had to do. It was walking and one facing movement. We practiced it for half an hour. It's kind of going back to the whole, the Army doesn't stress marching, and so even though it's something super basic, people were out of step, people weren't turning at the same time, people weren't keeping even close to right spacing. Like one person would be 3 feet away, one person would be like right on top of the next guy. So we had to practice it for half an hour. And then they finally let us in. We did our ceremony, which probably took 15 minutes. The time we spent practicing was much more than the actual ceremony itself. Partway through the ceremony, when they got the pin on our wings, if you had someone there to see you, they could come over and pin them on for you. If not, the air assault sergeants came around and made sure that the badges were on your uniform. And it was funny because they made sure to, in the ceremony, declare that blood wings are not legal. Yet at least half the group did them. If you're not familiar, it's just once you put them on, hitting them in a little harder to the point where the pins puncture your skin and make you bleed a little bit. And apparently it's considered illegal in the Army, yet everyone likes to do it because it's a tradition. I don't see the point. People ask me why I didn't want to do it, and I don't see the point in it. But so a lot of people were doing that. I put my pins on after the ceremony, and I'm very glad I did, because there were a couple guys just going around punching them into people, and one of the guys hit me, and if I did not have the backings on it, it would have been a terrible like blood wings, and it was painful enough with the backs on. So yeah, don't be that jerk that does that. I mean, I understand you like the tradition. If you want to have somebody punch you, go ahead. But you don't need to walk around punching every single other person just because you think it's funny. It's just dumb. Anyways, once the graduation ceremony was done, we waited for everybody to clear out of the classroom. We usually, from the air assault sergeants told us that they usually have the ceremony outside, but because it was raining and thunderstorms in the area, we had to have it inside, so we had to wait for the classroom to clear, and they cleaned it up. Then we went over back to where all of our gear was, and we waited there for another hour or two. They had the merchandise available to buy, the clothing, the pictures, and the plaques and stuff. So if you wanted to buy it, you could. There was a pretty long line for that. And once they finally got everything done and they inspected the barracks, they told us we had our certificates, and we collected them and we left. So that wasn't the end of the day for me, because due to all the terrible weather, a whole bunch of flights got delayed, and I ended up missing one of my flights after my layover, and so I ended up having to sleep on the floor of the airport. So that was just the beginning of my travels, but that was the end of air assault. So very glad I got the opportunity to go. I would do it again if I had to, and I would actually like to go to other Army schools if possible, but it was a good experience. That's all I have for today. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions or comments about air assault, feel free to leave them in the comments section below. I'm going to come out with a whole nother video on tips for air assault, so be looking out for that. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button, and we'll see you next time. Have a great day, guys.